Yeah, might as well go for
I
it.
suppose we'll probably get some people straggling in.
Yep.
I know I was running a little late. We'll just go around in a circle and introduce ourselves. I'm Doug Selby, formerly Metal Arch Builders, these days a zero energy modular home builder.
David Farrell, architect.
Janice Gervais, Reamco Design Build in Chelsea.
Chris St. Lawrence from Absolute Title.
Ashley Guerrero with Greenstone Farm Credit Services.
Amy Bobo, CMR Mechanical.
Pete with BRAGAA. Oh, me.
I'm the presenter, Doug King, with ProEnergy Consultants. I'm a certified energy efficiency consultant and HERS rater. And you know, I've been asked today to kind of go over you know, some of the benefits. There's some really big changes coming up in 2023. We've got the Inflation Reduction Act. Is everyone familiar with that? Has everyone heard about that?
It's confusing. There's a lot of parts of it.
There is, yeah. I have a workbook that I can give everyone that attends, you know, get an electronic version of it, the latest version of it. It's an ongoing thing. The tax credits are pretty much all in place. It's just really the rebates that are going to be set up by the state and how those get handled, how those get distributed to the citizens is really still up in the air. But it is coming together, but it's really big. There's a lot of opportunity for, there's a lot of money available for upgrades to their home. Obviously with a focus on electricity, upgrading to heat pumps, but there is money for windows and insulation and, you know, doing your basic upgrades to the home as well. So it's really exciting stuff. And I'm sure you've all heard too of A to Zero, Ann Arbor's quest to become carbon neutral by 2030. There aren't any incentives there from the city, but you know, that is a ongoing overall theme for upgrading homes. A lot of homeowners, I've been finding, they just want to know what their options are, right? Because there's heat pumps for everything now. There's heat pump dryers, there's heat pump water heaters, you know, there's heat pump air conditioners, you know, there's full-blown heat pump furnaces if you want to go that far. You know, and all those are very energy efficient. And again, the city of Ann Arbor is really trying to migrate people off from natural gas. They'd really like, and that would fit in with their A to Zero quest by 2030. So there's a lot going on, and then the utilities have rebates too. DTE and Consumers Energy, they still have energy efficiency upgrade rebates for windows and insulation, and you know, that's still available to homeowners too, doing an upgrade to their home. So you know, with Consumers Energy, it does require an energy audit first in order to get access to the most amount of money from Consumers Energy. DTE doesn't have that stipulation for the money. The rebates are all the same whether you have an audit or not. But Consumers Energy, the rebates are considerably higher if you did, if you have an audit done first before you do any upgrades to the house. So there's really is an incentive there to, if you're going to make any upgrades to the house. And on the Consumers Energy side, there's a fair amount of money that's available to homeowners as well. So, but I handle all that, and that's another reason to have the house audited before you make any upgrades to it. And then that's what we'll just go over a little bit. You know, what is an energy audit? That, you know, that term, you know, it gets banged around a lot. The utilities offer energy consultation, and they'll just walk through your house and tell you to turn your thermostat down, and they'll give you free light bulbs. And that really ticks a lot of people off because they think they're getting an audit when they sign up for that. And that, I can't tell you how many people have called me and said that they they waited months because they have quite a backlog on coming out and doing that. And then they come out and then they just walk through your house and say, turn your thermostat down when you're not here. And here's some LED light bulbs to help lower your energy consumption. And that isn't what they're looking for. So they're really looking for, what I do is a full energy assessment of the home. So, and that's you know, includes a blower door and infrared, and if you want to take it as far as there's ways you can rate your home, again with ResNet, and we go into that a little bit later. But a ProEnergy audit is really a whole home performance analysis. So it's really coming in and testing the house with blower door, infrared camera. So we're looking at air leak detection. They get a final report, prioritized return on investment report. And then one of the biggest things too, if you're doing an upgrade to the home, we do a post-test, and then coming back and finding out what the house is, how it's performing at the end after those upgrades have been. And that really is important. It's important to understand what needs to be addressed in the home, but it's also important to come back and do a final test on the house to see where it ended up at. Because we're talking, in a lot of cases, we're getting into indoor air quality issues. And if the house gets extremely tight, then you're going to have some form of ventilation going through that house. And we'll have that conversation at that time. So it really isn't just a matter of just throwing in new windows or throwing in new insulation and hoping for the best. You know, there really is a smart way to do that, and that's doing an energy audit prior to doing any of the upgrades, and then you get a post-test at the end. And just a little bit about me. I've been doing this in my 14th year, and I've been in a lot of homes over those years. I've seen a lot of stuff, and I think what Doug wanted is to have some, casual conversation about, some of the things that I've seen over the years, but just everyone who doesn't understand what the testing part is, there's something called a blower door. This is now required for new construction. So new construction, any new home has to have a blower door on it. And I still get calls, still this last week, I've never heard of a blower door. The building inspector is telling me I've got to have a blower door on this house before I can get certificate of occupancy. I've got to get this done. And it's just amazing. It's been in place since 16, so it really has been around a while. But you can do one, and we do it on existing homes, and that's where we go around and we look for leak detection. And this is a good example of the things I find. This is a laundry room. That's a cabinet. And that blue stuff coming out of there is air. When the house is under pressure, that's cold air. This is a recent assessment I did. This house was built in 2012. And the air is just pouring in around that cabinet. And that's something I see a lot, and again, just trying to express, or pass along some things I see a lot. Cabinets, for whatever reason, the wall cannot be damaged behind that cabinet. Just because you're putting a cabinet in front of it doesn't mean that it's all A-OK now, right? That has to be drywall, that has to be finished, that has to be mudded, has to be taped, it has to be everything before that cabinet goes in front of it. In this particular case, that really, really affects the performance of this home, because that's there's something really going on bad behind that wall. That's a lot of air that's blowing out from around that cabinet. Those are the types of things that I find when I do an assessment. And I see this a lot too. So third floor attics. Everybody wants to turn a third floor attic into a living space, right? And so this homeowner did this in 2016. This is from 2016. And what you're seeing there is, this is an attic, so the vaults are to the left and right, and then that center piece is the triangle that's on top of the roof line, right, of the room, right? Do you see that? So those blue squares, that's empty. There's no insulation in there at all. So the vaults are insulated because they're really red. That indicates that those vaults are insulated. But where I'm going with this is what I see a lot on these third floor attics. Everyone wants to use fiberglass insulation on those, and it really is not as effective. If you're going to put a room upstairs in the attic, really hot roofing that, spray foaming that roof is really what's recommended. That way, we're stopping all ventilation, we're doing the best insulation possible for that space, and that's really going to make the best performance for that home. Because more than likely, I'm assuming that they either kept insulating up to the peak with this, but that's a ventilated attic, right? So it doesn't matter. The fiberglass is not going to stop air. So that whole ceiling there is uninsulated. And the homeowner said, you know, is that why one of my corners I get all this ice coming off my house, right? This house was built in 2016. It's just, I don't know, I get a little frustrated, we'll put it that way. And so, I mean, this is, you know, the type of thing that I see on remodels or in brand new homes when it really is affecting the performance of the home. And again, we can get into a little bit more detail on those homes. Really what they got me in there for was, and this is a major driver for everybody, is the house is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. The rooms are different temperatures, and the house is uncomfortable to be in. And there's no reason for this to be happening, and that's why I really jumped at the chance to talk to the community today to try to, you know, get some dialogue back and forth and see what's going on, and just show you some of the things I'm seeing that are really causing homeowners problems a lot. So some of the incentives, customer benefits, like I said, there's utility rebates from from DTE and consumers. There's federal tax credits. They've upped that to $1,200 per year now, and it's not capped like it used to be. It used to be $500 lifetime, which was like nothing. But now it's $1,200 tax credit per year per homeowner. And then the Inflation Reduction Act, like I said, there's up to $8,000 rebate money available to homeowners, plus the tax credits up to $1,200 as well. But you know, the bottom line is a better performing home. They reduce their energy bills, they increase their comfort, and you know, this is something that I find really striking too is, you know, overall satisfaction. You know, if you're coming in and remodeling someone's home or you're building someone's home, wouldn't you like to leave that customer with, boy, they did a great job in my house, I'm really happy to be in here, and I'm really happy to be in this space. And every customer I have that has had a remodel or in a new home, they're saying they're very uncomfortable with that space. And so by following some basic building science principles, you can make that house, as long as you're in there and you're doing upgrades to the house, you can make that house very much more comfortable than it is even before you get in there. And that's why having the assessment done first, we can lay out all the issues with the house, and the homeowner has a remodel or an addition or something they want to take place. The remodeler has an opportunity to take that report and say, hey, yeah, as long as we're here, we can do these other upgrades too, and then you'll end up with a better product at the end, and you'll end up with a happier homeowner at the end. So, and then again, I come back in and test it again to see what the condition of the house is after all the upgrades have been done. So it really is, there's, you know, in my mind, there's no downside to having an assessment done before you do any kind of major project to a home, but that's what this is supposed to be about. we want to have that dialogue.
Doug, I just wanted to mention too is that, you know, not only are you doing a huge service to your client, but frequently you can increase your sale at no extra cost to your client. So where's the rub, you know? It's just a little bit of knowledge that's needed on the front end. And that type of knowledge that he's giving you on an existing house is invaluable. It pays for itself, right?
It does. The combination of the rebates and the lower energy consumption, and but you know, something I shared with Doug this week too. You know, I was just recently in a home, and they had the basement remodeled. They had her mother moved into the house, so they needed to put a bedroom, and they made a need to make the basement livable. And so they came in, and they didn't use the whole basement. They used about 3/4 of it. So there was still a portion of it that was still the original house basement. And so the remodelers spray foamed the bond, the rim joist, on the remodel part, but they didn't do it on the old basement part. And I asked her why did they not do the whole basement when they were down there, right? And she's like, well, they never asked, and they never said anything. And I would have been on board with doing it if it would, you know, cost a little bit more, right? And so that's where the remodeler, you can expand what you're doing there. You can increase your, you know, work with the assessment. But what I find a lot of times is the homeowner would like to at least have the discussion about it and talk about it and see what their options are. And that's another thing that I bring to the table. You have my report. You'll say, okay, here's everything that needs to be done to the house, and here's what you want to do to the house, and then you guys work it out. But more than likely, they'll pick up a few of those changes. Because I've seen, like in that house, they put glass block in the new part, but it still had the old single pane metal frame windows in the old part, right? It's like, why wouldn't you just put all glass block in all the basement and be done with it, right? That would have been a nice upgrade for that home. I don't know, I see that a lot, and what I do hear consistently is, well, you know, the remodeler, you know, they never said anything about it, or they never brought it up, and I never heard about it. I didn't know what my options were. And so I think that's what I'd like to convey to everybody is that, you know, I'm sure everyone, you know, I guess there's probably a point of you don't want to feel like you're, you know, trying to pad your, you know, your job here. Well, you know, let's see what else is wrong with your house, right? And we'll fix everything. But I think the mindset of most people is they really, you know, there's things that maybe have been going on in the house. Yes, they're focused on this addition or this remodel, but having the whole house assessed, and then maybe incorporating a few of those upgrades. And then again, there's rebates, you know, just about for everything. So there's, like Doug said, you know, in the long run, it's gonna pay for itself. Whether immediately through rebates or eventually through utility bill reduction. So it's just, to me it's a no-brainer, but that's what we wanna have that discussion about and see where you, from your perspective, you know, what do you see the downsides of this at? You know, what do you see the negative parts of this? But, you know, this is something that I think is really cool. I've seen this, it's really the, you know, everyone's seen the food pyramid, right? And so this is the energy efficiency pyramid. So what do you start with, right? And so obviously the energy efficient, the consultant, you know, assessment is first, right? And it goes all the way up to, you know, solar panels. And then what I get into a lot of homes that have solar on it is obviously there's Solarize Ann Arbor, another initiative Ann Arbor has. And moving to solar power is not a bad thing. But if you're looking to improve the overall performance of the home, that doesn't change the performance of the home. It just changes where your fuel's coming from, right? But it doesn't change the efficiency of the home, or it doesn't change the comfort of the home. You're just moving the fuel from the grid to the sun, right? Which is a good thing, but at the same time, you know, if you're gonna invest in your home, you really want to get it to perform the very best you can before, and that's the idea behind this is on that return on investment, right? And that's really what the pyramid is really based on. And then just our mission statement, really, you know, committed to the community and awareness, and for a healthy environment for everybody. And that's really where we're coming from. And again, think globally and act locally. You know, what can you do to make a difference? And you're in these homes all the time, and this is such an opportunity. And to me, it's not that big of a stretch to have the house assessed and maybe do some more upgrades to the house to make it a little bit better. And then you end up with a much better product at the end. So that's kind of just, you know, like I said, the overall things. And I think Doug wanted this just to be kind of an open discussion. I didn't want to just, you know, set up here and just, you know, talk at you guys. So any questions about anything I brought up?
I think it makes a lot of sense for retrofitting a home or at the end of construction for a new home. Is there anything that ProEnergy offers during the design phase of a new home?
Yeah, that's the HERS rating. So the home energy rating system is developed by the EPA, and it's really that certificate or that you get for that home tells you the performance of that home, and it's the same. It's almost the same as sticker that's on a car that says this gets 35 miles to gallon or whatever. It's really what's the energy consumption of this house, and I can do that right from the design stage, and I can do it. And they have it. It's called a projected rating based on plans, and so based on the drawings and whatever you're going to come up with for mechanicals and the windows and the insulation, and you tell me, and I build the house virtually first, even before anything's happened to it. And I can move things, I can add things, and I can upgrade things, and I can downgrade things, and I like to work with builders, and because everyone has a budget, right? That's all I hear is budget. I'm sure everybody here is budget, and trying to get the best performance out of whatever you can afford. We can make changes into the software, and I can really see, because it's going to tell me what the annual consumption will be for that house based on that configuration. So if you want to save maybe a couple $100s a year, and maybe you put in $2,000 worth of more insulation, or you do upgrade the appliances a little bit, they'll make them a little bit more efficient than they are. But yeah, that's something that can easily happen right up front before anything other than the drawings have to be made. But
does that give like heat load calculations and stuff too?
It does. Yep. It's not a true manual J, but it does. It has to calculate BTU, and so it tells. So I just did we just did 3 new houses in Ann Arbor, and the builder really wanted to put in, or the HVAC guy wanted to put in, he was recommending a 24,000 BTU furnace. And my software was telling me it was going to be closer to 36,000, that we really should put it in there. So we did end up with putting a 36,000 BTU system in there. But yeah, it definitely generates that. It has to. That's how it's going to know what the annual consumption is. So.
I would also just say too is that what the CMRs and the good HVAC contractors of the world will do for you is also do those manual J's and help you design how to put the amount of air you need where it needs to go, so that you don't have those comfort problems, especially when you're building an energy efficient house. It changes the dynamics a lot. And you really, honestly, for the health of your clients, even in any house, given the tightness that we build any house today, you need ventilation. And but the tighter the house and the more energy efficient, the more critical it is, and the more that's going to impact the physics of the house. So, getting professional help on designing that system is critical, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to say on that, but
Yeah, ERVs are kind of becoming the new standard. I mean, even people that are tightening up their house. New houses, obviously, we just put them in. But with ductless systems, you know, converting all to ductless, you've got to have some sort of air exchange. And it's basically just a mechanical ventilation versus just putting a hole in your house and every time the furnace kicks on, it pulls air into the house. It's not the way to do it anymore. So.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Yeah, that's definitely. And I have to share this story with you because it just blew my mind. So again, energy efficiency is out there, and you know, there's builders who are trying to do the right thing, and it's all bits and pieces, right? And I bring it all together for you. But at the same time, I just had a house. I just did a blower door test on a house, and he used SIP panels. Is everyone familiar with what SIP panels are? Insulated structural panels for the house. So the blower door, like I said, that is required for new construction. So the code is 4 air changes per hour at -50 Pascal or less. So that is code. That's how tight the house has to be.
Which is loose, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's, yeah, it depends
not,
on who,
it's not a great
you talk
standard.
to. Some of these builders are having a hard time hitting that. But I just did a house, and it came in at 0.96. And guess what? The homeowner was running a dehumidifier in the living room because the windows were sweating, heavily sweating. And it's like, because nobody mentioned ventilation about that. They didn't have, all it had was what Andy was talking about, the makeup air. That furnace doesn't kick on. It rarely kicks on in that tight of a house, right? And then, like you said, that's just not adequate enough to ventilate these houses at the rate they need to be ventilated. So when I do the blower door, my software tells me how much air that house needs, and that house needed 82 CFM running 24/7 in that house. And so we needed an ERV in order to do that. And I told the homeowner that please put in an ERV like immediately. And it's just really just, I just could not believe that here he's running a dehumidifier in the middle of winter in the living room, right? And it's just now, you know, it's just not knowing what's, you know, but that's what I bring to the table, right? Because in HVAC guys are invaluable too, but evidently this person, whoever did this installation, didn't, you know, they just thought that that was going to be adequate enough, just to put the makeup air duct in there, which is not.
The reason that you're not getting enough CFM in the house is because when he goes through and tells everybody to tighten it up, the older houses, 60s, 70s, even some builders that build super loose right now, every time the furnace gets on, it'll pull through any little space that there is in order to pull the air through, whether it's a door or between the block and the foundation. It will pull wherever. So as soon as you tighten it up or spray foam it, it instantly seals that up, and then you can't get those air exchanges in there. So that's why the house was sweating so bad, is because it just could not get any air.
What I find is incredibly ironic about all that is that, you know, with an ERV you get to you get to choose where you pull stale air from and where you impart fresh air to. So you build some energy hog of a house that's leaking air. Well, guess what? The air quality still sucks because you're pulling from the base, or you know, you're having it come in from the basement and the attic, the unconditioned spaces, which you know aren't the areas where you need fresh air and usually bring a lot of pollutants with them. So. I just find that ironic, and I can't say enough how much, like, just the planning on the front end. I know nobody wants to pay for it as a customer to pay for that planning and stuff like that, but man, would you rather put in a whole ERV system after the fact or plan for it on the front end? If it's a SIP house, my God, that opens up a huge range of possibilities. You got an extremely tight, extremely well insulated house. You can do air source heat pumps, you can do a variety of things and include that ERV in the package and not have it cost that much more because your load is that much lower.
Right, and then and there's just another piece of that too is, so this house had a forced air system in it, so you could add an ERV system to it relatively easily, but the true way that they want that ERV installed is an independent duct system. So like Doug was saying, it's gonna pull stale air out of like the kitchen and bathrooms and then dump the fresh air into the living spaces, right? They want that independently ducted so that you get the best performance out of that. Because if this ERV has to run through the regular duct system, especially if you have zones going on and then you have another filter that it has to go through, because there's a filter system in the ERV. So that's really going to reduce the performance of that ERV if it's got to go through. And I've seen, believe me, I've seen this, they don't like to duct them very well either, no offense, Andy, but I mean, all these supplies, and they're just twisted and they're crimped and they're just, you're not going to get any airflow through that, you know. So by having a complete ducted system for the ERV, you know, on top of the forced air system is what's preferred.
Andy, I'm sure you know, as you know, there's a wide gulf between HVAC providers out there too. So, you know, going to a reputable company that's going to do the planning on the front end is worth the extra few $1,000s that it's going to cost for somebody to come in and be like, yeah, I'm just going to put this size system in and whatever happens, you know.
So as a builder, if you kind of have a standard wall and a standard window, and you kind of have some standards, custom homes, but would you still do that HERS projected rating on everyone, or once you kind of know where your standards at?
Yeah, it really is. I would do it, you know, obviously I think it should be done in every home, and you know, everything is, yeah, I mean, there's standard to some degree, but you know, there's a lot of variations going on in the size of the house, the orientation of the house. You know, the software takes in everything about that house. So I really think doing a projected rating, and then you know, another one of the benefits of it is I generate a building report, which a lot of townships or cities, they accept that as to be able to get your building permit. So I generate that for builders, because it's really everything that I have to, you know, it has everything about that house. The performance is all there. Everything that's going in, every wall, every window, every door, you know, everything about that house, and they accept that to launch the building permit. So.
And that's what consumers needs too, is that report for if you're getting any of the rebates?
Well, if you get into their new home programs, yes, they want, it is a certain HERS rating that they want to happen in order to achieve. There's a rebate for new homes for both DTE and consumers energy. And that's another piece of IRA too, is there's money at you know, on that federal level too for building energy efficient homes too. So you know,
$2,000, right?
What's that?
$2,000 to the
2,000.
builder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
DTE has other programs that are pretty generous for going all electric too.
Yeah, they're all electric home, and that's what I just helped with the building 3 all electric homes in Ann Arbor, and yeah, it just is. There is some money out there available for it. You know, it's interesting. I've talked to quite a few builders about this, and I don't know. I mean, they'll look at $2,000 like, well, that isn't anything. You know, $2,000 doesn't mean anything to me. You know, that's too small to go through all this work, right? So, just depends, I guess, what your perspective is. But I have gotten that a lot. It's like that isn't even for that money. That isn't enough to give me an incentive to do it.
Have to do most of it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really well, what I'm doing is I'm just documenting everything and making it official, right? And making sure that the things that you said you were going to do in the drawings are actually make its way to the house. And that's, you know, so that's really just another way. And then again, the blower door comes at, it's required at the end. But that's really not the time to find out that your house isn't going to pass. Believe me, it's not the time. and makes a lot of builders very unhappy when I say they don't meet the requirement. So having me there along the way, you know, just really making sure that things are going to be addressed as the house is being built, so that it does pass at the end. But again, there's a whole lot more to it. There's the indoor air quality piece that Doug was talking about, you know. There's just a lot to it, as opposed to just a bunch of pieces, parts. What I think what the industry still looks at is, well, we got a high efficiency furnace in there, so we're energy efficient, right? And it's like, well, it's a piece of it, it's just not all of it. And then this one builder who just got hung up on, he likes SIPs, he likes them, right? And because that's what he builds with. But what about the people that have to live in that house? You know, the house is sweating to death, you know, because it's not ventilating properly. So there's just, you know, just to do it blindly, in my opinion, just doing it blindly is just risky.
If you don't take building envelope into account with your HVAC system and how that's designed, you're probably going to have problems, in my opinion.
Yeah. And Andy, you can speak more about that, Manual J and sizing equipment and you know, some of these really tight houses, how that affects your, you know, what you end up selecting for the homes.
What's ironic with what you said about the builder that chose too small of a system, it's usually the opposite.
Yeah.
It's usually I'll go into a house and I'll find, you know, 100,000 BTU furnace in a 1,400 square foot house, which if it was tight, a 40,000 BTU furnace might actually be a little oversized for it. And a lot of times, what I'm finding is that HVAC people are too scared to put the right size in, even though you do a manual gen, you're like, okay, I can do a 40,000 BTU furnace. If I go to try to pick up a 40,000 BTU furnace at my supply house, they're like, nobody buys these, we don't stock these because they're just not called for. It's always 60 or higher, even though you know that you can get away with it. And I probably put 10, 15 in a year. I mean, on smaller houses, they're not monsters by any means, but you really, if you start to look at the building science behind it, and you know that they've done some improvements, even though they might not have talked to Doug, but they say, yeah, since the house was built, I blew in insulation here, I changed windows. I mean, that changes the envelope a lot. So what I'm finding is that a lot of times I get questions from homeowners like, well, everybody else ordered me a lot bigger furnace. I know, I get it, I've seen it. There's problems with that because if it's oversized, it doesn't run enough and runs a couple minutes, and so it'll short cycle and causes just issues in the house. Same with air conditioning too. You want it to run, but you want it to pull humidity too. That's the thing that people forget is if you pull humidity, you get a lot of the problem. And in the summertime, that's a big deal in Michigan. So you just got to be careful about what you're doing. But I have found that overall, it's oversight more than undersizing.
Who here has lived in a house where you're cold and then the heat comes on and you're hot and then the heat goes up and you're cold and then that's that problem right there.
Yeah, and like Andy said, you know, in the past, you know, the oversizing was the rule. They just oversized everything. But I just did a house in Ann Arbor, 980 square foot ranch, right? Built in 1955, and it still had its furnace from 1955. And that thing was 130,000 BTU.
80% operating at 50%.
Yep, and that's what the homeowner said. That thing comes on and it's like a sauna in there, you know, and then it shuts back off, right? And then the house cools down. It's just wrong. It's really
But they could have
wrong.
replaced that 3 times. They're so proud of that furnace. I've had it since 1955.
Running
If
at
you showed them
50%.
the energy analysis from it would make them sick because they could have replaced it 3 times.
No
But
question.
you just move on. You're like, oh, you know, good job. You know,
I know.
good job keeping it up. You know, thinking that's a hog.
It's a museum piece, you know. It was probably at least, I would say probably 10 feet long.
Green.
Green,
Yeah.
yep. Waterbury,
Yeah.
yep. And Art Deco, right? Rounded corners and a big chrome plate on the front of it, and it was gorgeous. It was.
Except for the bad air quality and the
Yeah. And 130,000 BTU for a
40 would have
900.
been too big. I mean,
40%
40,000,
too big.
96 is probably too big for that house even, so that's the smallest that they make is 40,000.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, the industry is really running into that, and I've seen a few things where they're trying to get down to like a 20,000 BTUs. Because these houses they just don't require it. And that's another thing that I would like to try to get across to the industry is, I just did a house this week, and so it was a 20s colonial in Ann Arbor, and somebody come on and remodeled it, and they added first floor, second floor, and then that was actually that attic. They maybe 20 by maybe 20 by 30 addition on the end of that. So what they did though, that they ignored the old house completely. Let's pretend it's not there. They came in, they did their addition, they put another furnace into this house, right? And then they put another thermostat on the first floor, almost right next to the thermostat of the other one, and of course, the house is uncomfortable. Those two furnaces, it just doesn't make any sense to set it up that way. The house now has way more horsepower than it needs because overall the house is actually fairly tight, but and that's when I get into the homeowner, it's like, what they should have done was, so the original house had a 100,000 BTU furnace, which was probably oversized for it anyways, and then they put in a 60,000 BTU furnace for the other side. And again, it's just way overkill, waste of money, waste of resources, waste of time, in my opinion, on just so many fronts, where they should have just said, look, we're going to have to reduct this to tie in the new addition. We're going to have to make a few, move things around a little bit, but it's going to be better in the long run for the performance of this house. And that's, at this stage now, you could still do it because they, everything's in the basement and they ran all the supplies up, to the addition. So tying it back into the furnace is still recommended, but those thermostats, those furnaces are just going to fight each other. So just in one half of the house it's always going to be uncomfortable because one furnace is not going to turn on because the other side is really, all the air is easily traveling from one side of the house to the other. The house doesn't know how to divide itself like that, air-wise. But,
Are there any changes to the building code coming up for like that 4 air exchange per hour? Anything? I don't know how often they change that building code.
Michigan fights it a lot. It took them forever to get the latest one in there, and I know they're talking about the new one, but the Builders Association does not want to get that any tighter than it is. Because actually they adopted 2015 code, which actually was 3 air changes per hour. And Michigan Builders Association said, no, we can't hit 3, we can hit 4. So they actually modified it to 4. But yeah, the energy code comes out every year, a new one comes out every year. Michigan, I don't know, maybe if anybody else here can elaborate on how often that Michigan gets voted on or gets decided whether they're going to adopt a new version of it or not.
Well, all of this stuff will be code by the 2021 Michigan Building Code. I mean, it's damn near a passive house standard. Actually difficult to get to and all that, but who knows when they adopt the 2021 code. We're still on the 15 code, so probably sooner than is usual for these kind of things, just because it's getting more attention now. Yeah, but when it does happen, I think it's fundamentally we're just all going to have to change the way we build homes.
Yeah.
The way we think too.
Yeah, no, it's a whole panoply of issues. It's like, how does the physics of your building envelope operate with the physics of an HVAC system? If nothing else, if those aren't working together, you're not going to make it. You better start doing it now.
Yes. And that's my point, is bring someone like, having, someone, a rater involved. Because just doing this stuff blindly it's really, I'm already in all these homes because they're uncomfortable, right? Because it isn't working now, but as, you know, it's just going to get worse. So just blindly you know, putting these houses together and just hoping for the best is not a good strategy. But that's what this is about. This is just having to talk about these types of things, right? Your experiences. I've got a lot of experience with all these, and it's frustrating, like I said, to see that vaulted ceiling on that third floor attic, right? More than likely, I can almost bet what they did was they just put the fiberglass all the way up to the peak. Yep.
Yes.
Massive air leaks.
And then had either a gable vent or below that.
Well, even the ridge vent at the
Even
top
ridge
is
vent.
going to vent it, right?
Yep.
And not to understand that fiberglass has to be on the back side of that drywall to work.
And the fiberglass is a terrible insulation to begin.
It's a terrible product, but and that's just, you know, that love affair with fiberglass. I'd love to see that go away too, but that's
Well, it's cheap. That's why. And
But what they think, and this is, I like to bust this myth, that it does everything, right? It's air sealing, it does insulating, you know, it does, you know, water, you know. Fiberglass is really a very limited product. It's a thermal product only, and it doesn't stop air ever, no matter how much you cram it into an opening. It's still going to leak air around it.
you know, I have to say too, I used to be a competitor of Doug's, and we were offering the remediation services as part of the deal, which is why we would offer an audit. And we got to the point after all the tax credits ran out in like 12 or 13 or whatever, that it was difficult to sell an audit. And so we made deals with some home inspectors that if they would go in and offer an audit for just $99 extra on their home inspection, that we would come in and do a complete and comprehensive audit for $99, which Doug can tell you is a ridiculous bargain. And we got maybe 10 or 12 people in an entire year to take advantage of that. And the most common reason I heard was because the homeowner didn't want to know. They didn't want to know how bad their house was. So they're just going to continue living in an uncomfortable, unhealthy house because they'd rather do that than figure out something about the house that they would rather not know. So that's kind of a part of the mentality that we're dealing with, and why builders end up being told, I don't care what you do, I just want it to be this cost, you know. And of course, at the end of it, that's not how they think anymore, right?
Well, I think the reality is maybe, and that's where it is, I definitely have some dialogue around this, because I'm like, you know, I'm on the other side all the time. I get into remodels and renovations and additions, and the homeowners are very unhappy. And, but, so that's what I see is, no matter what they're saying up front, like, you know, I've got a budget and no, I want you just to do this, but then when it's all said and done, they're still not happy.
Why didn't you tell me that?
Why didn't you tell me that, right? So yeah, I understand it's a tough gig, but you need to have more dialogue with the homeowner. I think that's my recommendation. You know, I did one recently, a house in Saline. They didn't put the addition on, but they just recently bought the house, and there was an addition put on the back of the house, of an older house right in Saline. And it was so cold in the winter, she hangs plastic over the opening to the addition. To me, that's a waste of money, right? It was a waste of time. It was a waste of everything, right? You can't even use that, you know, year round. And if it's that bad in the winter, then it's that bad in the summer if you're air conditioning that house. It just isn't going to be as obvious. But, you know, and I talked to Doug, you know, this is how do you have some realistic conversations around homeowners, what they want and what they can afford and what's going to happen, right? But cutting the corners to where this house was it was so poorly done that she hangs plastic over the opening just to isolate that away from the house.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
How much does an energy audit run?
On average, about $350.
How many companies are like you, let's say in Washington County?
There's not many. Like me, I'm an auditor. I'm a true auditor. I'm not an insulator. I'm not, and so really, there really isn't anybody like me. Most everybody else is an insulator, at least minimal. But
Or
it isn't that
subcontracts.
many. What's that?
Or subcontracts that part.
Yeah, most of them are really do it, as far as I know. There might be one other auditor that's a true auditor, I think, in our area, Washtenaw, but there's not many of us. Michigan in general lags the rest of the country when it comes to high performance homes and how many are going in and how many gets HERS rated, how many gets. So the next level up from that HERS rating is, everyone's heard of Energy Star, right? Well, I can actually assign the Energy Star logo to a house if it meets the criteria. It's a step up from a HERS rating. It's the Energy Star. So the requirements are going to be a little, stricter for an Energy Star home. But again, Michigan in general just is reluctant to go down that path. But we have all 4 seasons, right? We have, we're really burning through a lot of power. And it does make sense to have our homes be the most high performance that they can be, in my opinion.
Not to make you go through a price list, but that HERS energy modeling that you would do for the projected rating, about what does that run for a new home?
For the whole thing, it's about $800 to $1,000. Yeah, and that's where it gets into that $2,000. Well, it's like, well, now you're cutting it in half. I have to pay you $1,000 to, and then it's just like, it isn't worth it to me.
But there is also the ability to go to a client and say, hey, I want to make sure you're comfortable and love this house at the end of it. Honestly, this might be a little bit, but we're going to get you a lot of that back, but I can guarantee you the results will be on the back end if we follow these instructions and know the physics of the house. And I've always found it to be a pretty easy sale as long as you have that dialogue with clients and that they make them understand what's in it for them. Because to me, it's a no-brainer. That information is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, I love $50,000 in custom cabinetry, but they don't necessarily want
Yeah.
to address the windows that need to be replaced.
Just the cabinets.
I've heard that. Believe me, I've heard that from builders. They're like,
It's so true. It's the last thing people choose.
We'll spend, the marble for the kitchen, and it's just like.
It's the only thing you put in that's actually going to pay you back too. That's the ironic part.
But for replacement systems, I recommend Doug a lot.